Hi, this is David Gawley from Pentagon Solutions and welcome to this first presentation on Autodesk InfraWorks 360. Datasets I'm going to be using are local datasets to Belfast in Northern Ireland. Just while I'm on that, if you were looking at DTMs in Northern Ireland from Ordnance Survey or LPS, I generally translate these in Global Mapper. As an example in here, you want to probably get it as an ASC file format, but the native file when it's received from Ordnance Survey actually comes in a text format. So that can be easily translated in a bit of software like Global Mapper. It can be translated in Civil 3D, but it is better to get it in an ASC format. So you can simply bring it into Global Mapper. It'll bring in a DTM as shown. Make sure you pick the right coordinate system. We're on Irish Grid or OSNI, or you can pick it by the geocode. And that information can then simply be exported. It's exported as an ARC ASC file. On the buildings point of view, what you want to do is probably use the likes of FME Workbench. The raw data from Ordnance Survey comes in DXF, DWG or NTF. You want to make sure that the NTF features are actually being closed off as polygons and that you get the feature name behind them. The reason for this, as you'll see, that means that I'll have a list of shape files that I can actually use. So if we have a look at my data set in here, I'll have a list of closed polygons for buildings, roads, education buildings, etc. in there. It's just not acceptable to use the native 2D DWG. In fact, you can't use it in InfraWorks 360 anymore. Okay, let's simply get started on a model. So I'm going to do a new model. And when the dialog box appears, what we're going to do is set up the options. Okay, so I specify the name of my model. I'm going to call this Belfast. And rather define model extents, I'm going to go into advanced settings. I'm going to make sure I'm using the Ordnance Survey National Grid. Again, you can pick your coordinate system from the list. It's got abundant coordinate systems in here, but I'm working on a local grid system here in Northern Ireland. And I'm simply going to hit OK. And it's going to create my actual data set. You'll see the new interface here in the background. It's very, very intuitive. You'll also see that if you're on the 360 version, that you can get access to the roadway design and bridge design as well. Okay, so now I'm ready to add some data in. So first data I'm going to add in is my raster image file, which is going to be my terrain model. One thing I'd say in here is if you have a look at the new features where you can import information, the Revit files, they come in the correct scaling now. You've now got Bentley DGN files that you can bring in. Very, very important for the building information modelling, certainly with a lot of focus on level 2 compliance in the UK. You've got IFC, which is Industry Foundation Classes. Now there is an option for this to actually be transformed over the cloud, or you can actually change the settings to have it local. I've changed mine for local in this instance. Okay, simply going to go to raster. I'm going to find my ASC file that I've just converted. Again, it's one sheet from Ordnance Survey. This area represents typically about 60 square kilometers. So let's get the DTM. There's my ASC file and let it generate. And it'll populate that area quite quickly, but what we need to do is double click and again configure that to the actual grid system. So let's do close and refresh, and let that refresh. Okay, so you can see very quickly within about 2 or 3 seconds that actual terrain has come in. What we want to do now is actually bring in the ortho photography against that. So again, we're going to add in a raster data source in here. I'm going to go back out into my orthos. And there will be 16 ortho tiles associated with this. In Northern Ireland we have a 16 centimeter data set, new data set that's been released the past couple of years. Simply going to hit open. Again, what we need to do is double click on that and set up the grid system and close and refresh. And that'll probably take about 2 minutes to come in. Okay, so that's my new ortho photography coming in the background. Again, that was about 2 minutes in processing, just while it's coming into the screen. I'll explain a bit the new interface. It gives you a lot more room visually here and to navigate and see things, but we can actually click on our InfraWorks button. We can go to roadways, we can go to bridges, which we'll see later on. So you can see how quick that is physically to navigate in here. Good quality orthophotography as well. It's down to 16 centimetre. But also a data set that we have in Northern Ireland is the road centreline data. And really what I want to do is try and get these road centre lines in and actually get them in as objects. So I've got them clipped as a shapefile. It's actually providing the whole country as a shapefile. You might just want to crop it down to the actual sheet in question. So I'm simply going to go to the road, bring in sheet 147. And when that sheet's being brought in, you simply double click, set up the geographic location, the coordinate system, which is OSNI, Irish Grid. And this time we want to make sure that the type is actually on roads, and we close and refresh. And what that'll do is that'll take that shapefile, road centerline data, and actually populate road information. So you can see in here we actually have the road data coming through. The nice thing about InfraWorks 360 is all the junction information, etc., all that's come across very, very easily in there in the background, as you can see. And very, very intuitive, straightforward to actually physically navigate here. Okay, let's build this up a little further. What I want to do is look at some of the housing data sets I'm going to bring in. Well, again, because we've translated these, because I've used the FME workbench to actually translate them, I'm going to go back into my buildings, and I've got a range of different shape files in here. Remember, these will need to be translated. This is not the way they're provided. And I'm simply going to pick up on normal dwellings houses. This is how it's classified by Ordnance Survey. I'm going to go in, specify the geolocation as before, and again make sure the classification is on building. Now you can assign a roof height, and you can put rules in for roof heights if there's property data behind it. There's no property data currently on the Northern Ireland data set, so I'm going to make an assumed roof height of 10 meters. I'm going to simply hit close and refresh. What will happen now is all the residential buildings in the area will actually be populated with the building height of 10 meters. I'll show. Okay, so we've got all the buildings now coming in. Now each one of these buildings we can individually pick up. We can right click and edit information for it, so we can change individual buildings in here if we didn't have the right information. The other thing that we can actually do is reconfigure the dataset information, and we can simply change that in there for the likes of slope information. I could say, well, the slope of all the buildings actually is a 30-degree pitch, and I'll add that in. There'll be some anomalies in there for houses that don't have that kind of pitch, but it's all down to the type of data that you actually receive in the first instance. Okay, just let that refresh. That'll come in, so you can see the pitch of the house is actually coming in there, and again we can actually change that. What we can also do in here is add a style to this. Now I've no real properties behind this, so I'm just going to add a generic style. These houses in this area are typically red brick, so we're just going to add that onto the properties. So in the style rule, I can simply pick a style I want to use, and I can say brick, close and refresh, and add it in. Again, we can change style settings as well, and you can add the styles up as an actual thematic control or rule-based control in there. Again, that information populates through, and you can see we've got our buildings. Okay, let's do that for some water features in here. So again, we'll add in the shapefiles. We'll have a look for some dam pond information. We'll configure it as before. Put the geolocation in, and we'll make sure that the type is the water area, and we'll close and refresh. So again, this is a very large area. It's about 60 square kilometers. It represents one full 10,000 tile off the OSNI grid. So what we can do is we can see down here some of the water areas are getting populated. It's still refreshing in the background, And again, you can see it is very good detail on the actual water. It's a nice visual presentation in there, and that information has been taken from the actual OSNI data sets in there. So we've got wee pockets. We also have pockets of streams, etc. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to build this up a wee bit further and add in some of the commercial buildings. Okay, so that's populated some of my buildings. I've simply added them in and pause the video in here, but what I have now is all the commercial buildings, recreation buildings in there. So with additional 5-10 minutes work, you can get that building content in very easily. So you can see now that the model is actually starting to fill up and have a really good content in there. The other thing we can do with the new interface in here, we can actually control the visibility. It's just slightly different orientation for it in here where it's located. So we can say control the visibility. So we can easily take information on and off. So we can go in here and look at the likes of our water areas. We can take this off. We can go in the likes of our buildings, and we can actually just say remove them in there. So it makes navigation an awful lot easier. Less clutter if you're trying to find your way about, and then if you want it back on again, you just simply take it back on. If you're looking for any of your cloud settings, etc. in there, or your to change the actual sun and daylight, that's very easy to do. So what we can actually do is go over to our settings in here and look at our presentation information, and you can see it's on the left hand side, and it's quite nice because you still see the information in the background. So we can go into our sky and sun and sky settings. We can actually change that information in there. So we can change the date. We can see what impact that is going to have visually in there, and we can actually see the actual time as well. In the background, we can also change wind direction and wind speed. So I change the actual cloud cover in here. You can see I'm actually getting an animation in the clouds. So the animation in the clouds going in here, and again we can just pop that down, take it off and take it off, and again we can change the date and time of year. So let's just pop that wind speed down and give it just a wee bit of cloud cover in there. If we have an area that we actually want to bookmark, what we can actually do is zoom into that area, go up to our bookmark and simply add it in. So we can say add bookmark and give it a name. So it means we can simply, as we're navigating about the model, we can easily create bookmark areas. So let's go back out here and actually add another bookmark, and we'll call that overview. For those of you who know InfraWorks, you'll just see it's in a slightly different location. So again, we can simply navigate between them by just clicking. So it's a good way to get that information. The great thing about InfraWorks 360 is you're not hitting save all the time. It's actually saving this back physically into the database in here as well. Okay, that's a quick overview and getting started. I'm going to follow up with some other videos when we're looking at more design parameters in here. But you can see it's a very intuitive interface, very easy to get started. Most of our questions would come around how you're populating data. You may need to look at other sources such as Global Mapper or using workbench tools in there. I'm David Gawley. Thanks for listening, and look out for the other videos.